Hi everyone, welcome to the NHVR Portal webinar for release 7.8.0. This will be released this afternoon, 15th of September. We'll go through a quick overview of the agenda, some housekeeping and who's presenting the webinar today. So go to the next slide. So we've got some housekeeping, the highlighter features, the roadmap, and then some contact information for the webinar. The panel members, we've got John Barry, who's the product manager. Hi, John.
Hey, Steve.
Hey. I've got Gilly McGee, who's the experience lead. Hi, Gilly. And then I'm Stephen Ryan, product analyst with the NHVR digital team. The format is we'll go through the slides, give a quick overview about what the new features are. Then where applicable, we'll provide a demonstration. And then we'll wrap up with the roadmap and then also showing some contact details if you have any questions. This webinar will be uploaded to the NHVR Portal Help Centre, so you can come back and refer to it at a later date if you need to. So we'll go into the features for this release. We'll pass over to Gilly to go through some new features around passwords.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of little things we've got coming to improve your experience in the portal in this release. Firstly, we've made it easier to reset passwords and hopefully even lessened the need to reset passwords, allowing you to show and view your passwords that you've typed into all our password fields. And I'm also just going to show you where you can access all of the tours that we're making for you, including these webinars within the portal. I'm just going to do a live demo. So the password reset features, what's going to happen now is if you're struggling to reset your password, as you hover over it, you'll get a little pop-up asking if you need a hand to reset your password and guiding you through the process. And it's just going to keep guiding you through, letting you know all you need to do and even what the next steps are. And alternatively, if I go back to my login screen and I type in a very poor password, and I'm not sure what I've typed in, I can now use the show hide feature to see what I've typed. And that'll help you determine whether you've typed the correct password in or not moving forward. And just to wrap that up a little bit more, moving forward, you'll see down the bottom here in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the bell icon, and you can click on that bell icon or tap it at any time and see all of our tours to guide you through using the portal. And I'm going to hand back over to Steve for the next part. Thanks, Steve.
Great, thanks very much, Gilly. That looks like some useful features for some everyday problems that a lot of us will run into around resetting passwords. So I'll move on to the next features now. So the next ones we'll show for the vehicle standards area. So we have a new document preview window for additional case close types. So currently, if you have a case submitted with the NHVR for an IPS or an exemption permit, if it gets closed with the issue of an approval document, so an IPS approval or an exemption permit, when that case gets closed, you'll receive a notification with a link in it, which will bring you back to the portal, and then that will show you the document that you've had added to your case. The vehicle standards team, so there's another few sort of case close outcomes that they want that same functionality for. So as you can see on the screen there, it's for IPA exemption, under notice, under and over 40-tonne SPV notices. So if you submit a case and it gets closed as one of those close outcomes, then the vehicle standards team can have a document that will be attached to your case. You'll receive a notification. When you click that link, it'll bring you back into the portal and that document will be presented. So that's the first feature, and we'll go through them at a high level, and then I'll go through some on-screen demos to show you how those look. The next one is a small but important one around validation. So this is to try and make sure that we get the correct information sent through to us in the first instance for an application, so that we don't have to come back with follow-up questions, which obviously will increase the time it takes to complete an application. So this one is around the wheelbase and extreme axle distance. So extreme axle distance has been added over the last couple of sprints and releases where we've actually put the field in for extreme axle distance. We're now using that to validate wheelbase, because a wheelbase should never exceed the extreme axle distance. So that there'll be on-screen prompts now to guide you through that, to make sure that we capture as much correct information as we can for an application as it's being put together. And then the final one is a little bit of housekeeping, is cleaning up in modification cases. There is at the moment a consultation tab which would show information about where we've contacted state-based road managers to talk about cases, but in the cases of modifications that doesn't apply, so we just remove that out of there just to clean that up so that it doesn't sort of clutter up the interface when you're trying to use that and there's tabs in there that you don't actually require. So I'll go into the portal now and show the features. So the first one was around the new attachment feature to be able to show a document for those other additional case close types. So in this case, we're going to close this case as a closed greater than 40 tonne SPV notice. So if I go into the approval screen and then I'll go into what the customer will see. So as the customer, you will receive an email notification. In that email, there'll be a link at the bottom. You click that link, it'll bring you into this view. And as soon as it brings you into here, you'll be presented with the document. Obviously, this one here is just like a dummy document for the purpose of display, but there'll be some useful information relevant to your case. There's also a link over here, which if you click that, it'll open up into a separate window. You have all the functionality that you'll have within your browser. You can print the document if you need to be able to carry a printed copy of that document. So that's the first feature for vehicle standards in this release. Then the next one is around the validations of wheelbase against extreme axle distance. So as you can see in here, extreme axle distance, it's an auto-calculated field that the portal actually calculates based on axle spacings that have been input in earlier stages of the application. If you put in a figure here that's equal to or less than the extreme axle distance, that's accepted by the system. If you put in a figure in here that's greater, you won't be able to complete this application without correcting that error, and it gives you the prompt there to say the wheelbase cannot exceed extreme axle distance, and it also shows up in the wizard steps here that there's an error in here that needs to be addressed. So that's a small but important one. And then the final one is for vehicle standards. This is what the cases look like currently in the production system. So looking at a modification case, it has this consultation tab here, which isn't relevant to a modification case. So what we've done now is we've actually removed that. So as you'll see here, that tab that has consultations has now been removed. So that way it just makes it a little bit simpler, and you don't need to see parts of in that case that aren't relevant to that case. So we'll just remove that. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So that's everything that'll be in today's release for vehicle standards. So we'll go back to the presentation slides. And then the next feature that we've got in there for today's release is related to accreditation. So accreditation has certain legal responsibilities and obligations, and you need to hold certain roles within an organisation to be able to do some actions within the portal. Some of those are to establish an accreditation, to exit an accreditation, and now we've also extended this feature if you need to remove a module. So in this case, it needs to be a legal representative or a director of that organisation has to take that action. So if you're sending through an application and you're not the legal representative or director, and you are able to send through a application to remove module, when the accreditation team are reviewing that, they'll send out an information request to say that it needs to be completed and submitted by either a legal representative or director. And so I can quickly show you what that will look like. So this is the view that you'll see if you're not a legal director or not a legal representative or a director. You'll get this information request back. In the case, if I was the director or legal representative, I would also have the ability in here to respond to it, but this is to show. So if I was the person that submitted this, I'll get this note back to say this has been submitted by somebody that's not authorised to take this action. So then you would need to escalate that within your own organisation and get the correct person to respond to it, and then that module could be removed. So it's just a little safeguard to help make sure that the appropriate people are taking these actions on for different actions within the portal. and it'll just stop these applications needing to be sort of withdrawn and submitted by another person. This allows it to continue, but it gives us an option to be able to send that back to you if we need further information and get somebody else to sort of submit to authorise those actions. So that's the feature that'll be in there for accreditation in today's release. Now we'll go back to the slides and I'll pass across to John to go through a couple of features for Access.
Great, thanks Steve. So for Access, we've got a couple of features that are targeting consents. Road managers will be the first to experience the changes to approval with conditions granted step. Now, currently the approval with conditions is fully automated where the permit has been marked as fully digitised or auto-issuable. Now for PBS applications and as part of the work we're doing with the PBS initiative, we're not at the point of digitisation yet. So to date, all of those approvals that have come through, particularly approval with conditions, have been going through a review step with Access facilitators here at the NHVR. As we've got a bit more information and worked out some of the processes around how we do approvals, and probably most importantly, the fact that road managers now across the board are using the standard conditions library for the majority of their consenting task, we are now moving to an approach where all consents that come through that are marked as approval with conditions, as long as they're using the standard conditions library, our Access facilitators won't be reviewing those further, so they'll get auto-approved. So this will be the first time that PBS applications and other applications that haven't that don't fall into the fully auto-issuable categories, some of the class 3s as well. Now all of those consents coming through from our road managers will be auto-approved. And that means that from an operator perspective, you should see the finalising of the outcome occurring a lot quicker without any of the review steps that have currently to date been applied. So that's a good change, which we'll have a little bit of a look at. The next one, which again is targeting road managers and is hopefully an accelerant to the consenting decision for PBS permits applications. Currently the applications come through, and for operators you'll know that you need to attach their vehicle approval. Again, because we haven't had the system properly digitised to date. So that vehicle approval document, or in the case of in-principle supports, those are attachments that are currently sitting right at the bottom of the case summary. And the case summary is the first thing that road managers see when they start reviewing a case. And one of the clear bits of feedback we've had prior to us fully digitising the PBS application process is making that information as accessible as possible, even if it's still in the PDF. So so that'll be that's what we've done. So we've refined the user interface a bit to ensure that that information is front and centre for road managers, so they can access it and start making their consent decision. So I'll go through those now. So this is the road manager's view of a case. So they see very much the same information that an operator would and what our Access facilitators do as well. But what you'll notice here for those road managers used to managing performance-based standards applications, we've moved the in-principle support and vehicle approval documents right up to the top of the case summary. We've also removed an image there, which was a placeholder image because there is no digital images for PBS vehicles in the portal. We've taken that out completely to remove what's really taking up space and is relatively redundant. Put the key information about the vehicle and load, and then provided direct access to the PBS approval file or files, depending on how many there are. So hopefully that'll help make that information a lot more accessible. The first one I talked about was around the decisioning. Now, For road managers, they'll complete a step for approval. Now, approvals have always been accepted and there's been no review. But as I said, from today moving forward, all approval conditions with those standard conditions only will be automatically approved and accepted, and move the case to finalisation in the case of performance-based standards. All right, so I might flip back to the slides. Okay, so the final feature we've got for release 7.8 today is the launch of our NHVR analytics reports. So NHVR analytics reports are powered by Microsoft Power BI, and our team is now working towards making those and using that technology to provide quite detailed analytical reports to road managers in the first instance, but we'll also be looking at how we can make that accessible to customers as well. The security model around providing access to these analytic reports is driven through the administration of your account. So we have two analytic reports that will be available today. Those two will be for road managers, and all road manager account partner administrators will be able to provide access to those reports to themselves or to any user in their account. So what you're seeing here is a view of your user administration, and down the bottom what you'll find is
John, you just need to share your screen.
Okay, so I will just do that. Oh, so you should see. So I'll swap back to.
That's got it. Yeah.
Got that. All right. So we've got two reports that are being made available: consent performance report and road access volume report. In the account administration section, which I was just talking about earlier, this is the user membership page, which account administrators will be familiar with, where you can manage the activation of that user and the access level of that user for various services. Down the bottom, you'll find a new report section where you'll be able to toggle on these two new reports for each of your users. So we've received this feedback that not all reports should be available to all users, and road managers have told us that they'd like to be able to control who can access that. So this provides that level of control. It doesn't mean that for every user that you do want to enable access for, you'll need to come into this partner administrator section, toggle into your user, and then switch on the reports that you want them to see. Once they've been authorized to view those reports, they'll find a new menu item under reports labeled analytic reports. And when they click on that, they'll find the reports that they've been given access to. So if they're only given access to one of these reports, they'll only see one of these tiles. If they've given access to both, they'll see both. And in the future, as we said, we'll start looking at how we can deliver more analytical reports, and this will provide ability to tailor which reports provided to each user. So you can see the two reports that we've got there, the consent performance report, which will go into a bit of a summary of information that's already published on our website around performance from the road manager perspective. This will provide the ability to start drilling down and see that performance over time, as well as starting to do some comparisons between yourself as a road manager and other road managers. We also have the other report, which is the road access volume report. Now, this report provides a breakdown of your applications, consents, and permits, and allows quite sophisticated drill down, right down to the level of an actual permit in the case of the permit finder, and a view from a geographical perspective, a heat map that shows for whatever filter selections you've made, where those consents have occurred. So we're hoping that this will provide quite sophisticated ability for road managers to start viewing their networks and looking at potentially pinch points and improve their consent approvals based on a bit more accessibility of that consent history, both from an application perspective and from ability to trace back to actual permits. And that is the Power BI reports. So as part of our NHVR analytics, we'll start to see a lot more of these reports flowing through. Let's switch back to the slides. And the final thing is the roadmap for 2020. So as you can see, we've started to progress work on PBS. We're now in the build phase for the tranche 1 functionality, which is the case tracker and the application submission Dropbox, we're calling it, which will provide the first online submission channel for PBS applications and the ability to track those cases through to completion. In tandem with that, we're also working on the data exchange part, which is the ability for PBS assessors and certifiers to start dealing with the NHVR in a more electronic sense in terms of data exchanges between systems or offline tools like spreadsheets and documents. You'll notice there that we have a new line item of work under digital asset management. So there's this is work, Commonwealth funded work that the Strategic Local Government Asset Assessment Project's been working on here at the NHVR. And as part of that project, we will be looking at a digital asset management module, really targeting local governments to enable the assessments that are currently being funded and prioritised to be captured into a system which will hold that information and then probably most importantly make that accessible both for road managers to inform their consents, but also for operators to help with route planning. So some of the early phases of this will be GIS layers, new network maps that will be published through the portal that will provide a view of the asset information that's being collected. And this asset information is particular to critical bridges and structures. And so that will start to provide a view of what vehicles can travel on those particular structures under what conditions, and also where there might be pinch points in the network. So ultimately, this information will also inform investment decisions around the management of structures and the improvements or upgrades, or even building of new infrastructure to help manage key freight routes and oversized overmass routes as well. The rest of the business services continue, so we'll continue on that maintenance path for access accreditation and vehicle standards. Saw a number of small but valuable improvements to vehicle standards. We also have a number of improvements that are coming through for accreditation and access, and we'll continue to work through with those business areas and bring in the PBS piece of work so that we get a bit more of a fuller integration between all the lines of business here at the NHVR. So that's the roadmap progress. I'll hand over to Steve to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, John. That's really good. Some great features coming out in today's release, and obviously some important work coming up in the next few months as well. Thanks to John and Julie for the sections you presented. You see there'll be a date announced for the October webinar, so that's normally around the third Wednesday of the month. There's also contact details there and other resources where you can go and see these webinars and other support materials that will be created to help guide you through your use of the portal. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for the portal webinar for next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, John, Steve. Thanks, everyone.